Hello, I'm Seb. Happy Year of the Horse, and another Lunar New Year means another homemade bingo board. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out aesthetically, quite similar to the snake one from before. Yeah, this is all horse-related reading prompts. I've got 16 different reading prompts. They are drawn from literature, from folklore, from myth. They're all to do with horses this time. I had a wealth of horse-related prompts. I couldn't fit all the ones that I wanted to onto this board, but I'm pretty happy with what I've gotten here. Last year's one actually looks a lot prettier now than in the last video because I put in the titles of the books in different colors. So I think I'll do that as I go so that this book will, this board will look prettier and prettier as the year goes on, as I make my way through the challenge Touch Wood. It's a reading challenge, so obviously I want to fill up the whole board, but every 4 in a row, you know, diagonally or vertically or horizontally, will give me a bingo. So I'll give myself a nice little treat for that. Like, I don't know, I'll buy a book or something. In this video, I'm just going to explain all the reading prompts so that you know what I'm up against this year, and also like you can play along at home if you want to, of course. Beginning with Kelpie, the Scottish water horse from folklore. This is a horse that lives in bodies of water, usually like rivers and lakes. The most famous one being the Loch Ness Monster, which, you know, originally was seen as a Kelpie before we got the Plesiosaurus theory of like, and that's just so fascinating to see how like a folk tale becomes an urban legend. I think one of the key things with Kelpies is the idea of like betrayal or entrapment, maybe, like because they're one of those monsters like that were there to keep kids away from deep water and stuff like that. So like, you know, you get on the horse's back and then it rides off into the water and you drown or something like that, and it eats you in the water. So yeah, for Kelpie I need to read a book connected to water and also connected to some sort of trap or some sort of betrayal. I've also put Anne there in parentheses because Anne is the name of the Kelpie in my favorite depiction of Kelpies that I've read. There aren't that many of them. I think it might be the only one in literature. It's in the manga Dungeon Meshi. There's a great Kelpie called Anne. And I put her there as well in case like I want to make the prompt deeper, or like, because in her case it's very much, the story is about like the relationship between animals and humans, and you know, especially companionship, like what it means to have an animal as a companion, and the, you know, the bond, but also the gap between those things. And I thought like that could add, but you know, the main thing has to be water and betrayal. The next one is Houyhnhms from Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. And yes, I did need to look up how to spell that. For this one, I want to read a book about a long journey, and not just that, also has to have something like a culture clash in it, or rather the sense of disbelonging or not unbelonging that comes with travel. So Gulliver goes and lives among the Houyhnhms, who are horses, and he comes to love their life and their culture and their civilization. And then he goes back home to England and he finds he doesn't fit in anymore, because he misses what it was like living with the Houyhnhms, and he's sort of a changed person after his travels. But then at the same time, when he was living with the Houyhnhms, he was also an outsider, right? Because he was a human and looks more like a Yahoo, which is one of the barbarians that live on their island. So yeah, a book which is about, or which features, the psychological consequences of travel, right? Because Gulliver stops belonging anywhere once he starts going into many places. Now, it's going to become obvious very soon, well, starting with the next one, that a lot of these are drawn from Greek myth, because I love Greek mythology and there are so many horses in Greek mythology. The most famous of these is obviously Pegasus, but I'm going to let you in on a secret. Pegasus is also the most boring one, or at least one of the most boring horses in Greek mythology. Yes, iconic, yes, majestic, absolutely no hate for Pegasus here, but just not as good for a reading prompt compared to the wealth of other horses that Greek mythology offers us. Although the one that I have here sounds very similar. It's Pedasos, not Pegasus. I put Pedasos / Fru-Fru. Fru-Fru being the horse from Anna Karenina, because they are related. In the Iliad by Homer, the main character, Achilles, who is half immortal and half mortal, or rather like his mum is immortal and his dad is mortal. He has divine horses who are very famous, and alongside them runs a mortal horse, which is Pedasos. Pedasos is not mentioned much in the Iliad. I think he only gets mentioned at one key scene. But first of all, straight off the bat, he is an amazing horse because he can keep up with the immortals, even though he's just a mortal horse himself. That alone makes me want to put him on this list, to be honest. But the real reason why Pedasos is in the Iliad is as a piece of foreshadowing. He's first mentioned when Patroclus, Achilles' friend / lover, is dressing up in Achilles' armor and is going out to fight in Achilles' place. And when he's out on the battlefield, a spear which is meant to kill him misses him but kills Pedasos. So the mortal horse dies, the immortal horses are like freaked out, and then the charioteer Automedon manages to unhook the dead mortal horse from the divine and kind of separate them. This is really meaty foreshadowing. Like there's a lot going on with Pedasos. So first of all, we have, this one horse who is really brave and trying its best and really impressive, but at the same time is just not as good, obviously, as an immortal, and it dies. And we have Patroclus, who is taking on the place of Achilles and doing really well on the battlefield, but he is, spoiler alert, about to die. The fate of Pedasos also reminds us of Achilles himself, who's a mix of mortal and immortal, just like the horses were. And, the fact that he will die is something which keeps coming back stronger and stronger as the story gets to its conclusion. And also the fact that there is something immortal in the glory that he could win through his death is something which keeps coming back. So one of the big main themes of the book, of mortality and immortality, divine and mortal mixed together, existing on the battlefield, is just so perfectly encapsulated in this one horse. This is similar to the much more famous Fru-Fru, Count Vronsky's horse from Anna Karenina, because Fru-Fru is like symbolic of Anna, right? Count Vronsky, there's this big set piece with the great race, and it's all, foreshadowing because Vronsky's so passionate and he's hitting the horse, and then the horse breaks its leg and he has to shoot his beloved horse. Fru-Fru is very dramatic, it's a brilliant scene. But honestly, I think Pedasos does it better. In any case, the prompt is obviously read a book with great foreshadowing. The next one is Horseface or Mǎmiàn. No, I'm really bad with tones. Tonal language is not my thing. But yeah, in Chinese, it's something like Mǎmiàn. And Horseface is one of the two guardians to the gates to the Underworld, the Buddhist hell from Chinese folklore and mythology. He's like a guy with a big horse head. The two guardians are like Oxhead and Horseface, even though as far as I can see, they're both like big hench guys with heads of animals, right? Including the horse. It should be horse head, really. Anyway, these two, as well as gatekeepers, are often depicted as psychopomps, as in, the character like Hermes or whatever who brings the souls of the dead from one land into the next. So this has to be a book which takes me to the Underworld. I'm going to leave it a little bit open to interpretation there. I'm leaving a lot of these open, I think, so that we'll see, like, does it literally have to be a book that is set or like partially set in the Underworld, or is it going to be something a bit more psychological? I'm not sure yet, so we'll see. Next, we have one from Japanese folklore. Sagari is a yokai, or sort of little goblin spirit. It's from the west of Japan. It takes the form of a horse's head hanging from a tree. Sometimes it drops out of the tree. I think Sagari just really means descend. So I guess it like can descend from the tree. I found a really cool picture online, actually, of a little statue. I'll put it here. I read in one place that if you see the horse's head hanging from one of these trees, then you're going to get a fever. But also that sometimes, like at night in the countryside, it will just drop down in front of unsuspecting people and scream in their faces. So for this one, I simply want to read a book that shocks me. The next one is Tir na Nog, the idyllic Irish land of use across the sea. It's like the Otherworld, basically, but it's like a kind of paradisey one where fairies live and stuff like that. In the story of Oisin, he marries a woman from that other world, and together they ride on a special horse, which doesn't have a name, unfortunately, which is why the prompt is just Tir na Nog, which rides across the sea, takes them to the land. They live there for 3 years, and then he starts to miss his family, so he decides to go back to Ireland to see his family and friends, and his wife tells him, just don't put your foot down on the ground, right? Stay on the horse. You can go back, but whatever you do, don't put your foot down on the ground. I'm wording this carefully because this one has to be a book which, much like Oisin's foot, is unput-downable. Bit of a stretch maybe, but also like kind of Tir na Nog is like fantasy escapism in this story. So it could be like, page turner, which lets me escape into another world, much like Oisin does, until obviously he does put his foot down and then the horse runs away and 300 years have passed and he's a very, very old man. Poor Oisin. Next we have a centaur. The most famous centaur in Greek mythology is Chiron by a mile. He's the teacher of Achilles and, a whole bunch of other heroes, and he was just very wise and noble, and in some depictions, like in Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, also very nurturing and like a kind of father figure. So originally I had the idea to put Chiron and something to do with nurturing, to do with development, to do with like kind of raising a child or helping someone to become a hero, an apprentice, a master, anything like that. But in the end, much like Pegasus, he's just not my favorite centaur. Like, I have 3 centaurs on this, I think. 2 centaurs and a centaur related guy. And Chiron didn't make the cut, unfortunately. So the centaur I have here, first of all, they're all in a row actually, so I can tell you all about them. First one is Nessus. Nessus is the centaur that killed Heracles, although he never gets any credit for it. Heracles and Deianira had just got married and they had to cross a river. And this centaur, Nessus, said, well, I'll carry you on my back across the river one by one. Let the lady go first, obviously. She gets on his back. They get to the other side of the river and then he runs off because actually he just wanted to rape her. Bad Nessus. Then Heracles, who has his hydra-poisoned arrows, shoots from across the river and hits the centaur, killing Nessus. But Nessus, with his dying words, tells Deianira, look, that guy, you love him now because you're young, you're newlyweds, but eventually he's going to go for someone younger, he's going to go for someone prettier. He will absolutely betray you. The only thing that could stop that happening is if you use the magic of Centaur's blood. That is a guaranteed aphrodisiac. It'll definitely mean that he stays in love with you forever. So whether Deianira 100% believes this asshole or not, she at least obviously decides to give it a shot. Doesn't hurt to try. She gets the blood in a little vial. Many myths and adventures later, lots happens, but lo and behold, Heracles does have a young woman by his side, and many actually, but in this specific instance, it's sort of like the final straw for Deianira. She gets the vial of blood, she puts it on a shirt, she sends it to Heracles so that he'll wear the shirt, and it kills him. It's because the blood was still mixed with the Hydra's poison, and after he's put the shirt on, it sticks to him and it burns through his skin, and as he tries to tear off the shirt, it actually starts pulling away big clumps of flesh. It's really horrible, and that's how Heracles dies. So for my Nessus prompt, I want to read a book which has a ridiculously complicated revenge plot. Something just outrageous. It has to take many years, because Nessus is kind of mad, but he's also a genius, right? Because his crazy idea actually works, and he thinks of it on the spot when he's dying. So yeah, revenge, and it has to be absurdly clever, or maybe just absurd. I don't know. Either works. Next we have Centauros or Centauros, who is the kind of half divine weirdo who decided to have sex with a lot of mares. And that's where the race of the centaurs came from, because this is Greek mythology. So yeah, this one has to be a book with perverse desires in it. I just read a play, it's not The Hand, Penthesilea by Heinrich von Kleist. That would fit this so well, because what is perverse desire is kind of very open to interpretation, but that play fits so well. That play is also probably the reason I put this prompt here, because I wanted to put it I wanted to put Penthesilea on my snake board, but I couldn't fit it in anywhere, whereas it would definitely fit here. And I just like reading about perverse desires, I guess. Who doesn't? Next, we're on to our last centaur related prompt. It's Latreus, who is the transphobic centaur from Ovid's Metamorphosis. Basically, there's this big wedding where the centaurs and humans are both invited and they end up fighting. And you'll see this in art everywhere. If you see centaurs and humans fighting each other, then it's definitely a depiction of this specific wedding of Pedasos. But at the wedding is a hero called Caeneus, who used to be a woman but was transformed by Poseidon into a man. And there's one centaur, Latreus. The way Ovid describes it is so funny. He's just kind of, because he's a horse, he's prancing around in a circle, but also taunting and jeering. He's misgendering Caeneus, he's referring to him as a her. He's dead naming Caeneus by calling him Caenis, which was the name that he had before he was turned into a man. He calls him a bitch. He keeps saying, you're actually a woman, we know what you are, you're weak, blah, blah, blah. And then they fight and he gets thrashed and Caeneus kills him, and it's very satisfying, especially reading, the Metamorphosis in today's culture war sort of climate. It's just a great win for trans people, I think. And I want to celebrate that by reading a book which is LGBTQ friendly, or something that fills me, with that sort of aggressive queer joy that I get when I read about Latreus getting absolutely trounced at the wedding. Next one is the other most famous Greek mythology horse, the Trojan Horse. I don't need to tell the story for this one. So this just has to be a book that isn't what I expected it to be. Or maybe a book with, a very unassuming cover, but a really wild story, something like that. Next we have Snowmane. This is the horse that the king of Rohan rides in The Lord of the Rings, Theoden, or Theoden's Bane they call it, because the Nazgul shoots a poison dart at Snowmane, and poor Snowmane falls over and the weight of the horse crushes her master. Is it a he or a her? I don't remember. Anyway, Tolkien makes a lot of the tragic irony of the fact that, it is the king's beloved horse, and it, you know, is the king of the horse people, and yet the horse is indirectly the cause of the king's death. So this has to be a book with a lot of tragic irony in it. I'm thinking probably a Euripides play for this one, because his tragedies are very ironic. Next we have Richard III, the Shakespeare play about a king whose famous last words are a horse, my kingdom for a horse. And it's really ironic, because at the beginning of the play he's introduced as really scheming and like, everyone thinks I'm a villain. Well, you know what, I'm just going to be a villain, I'm going to become the king, I'm going to do this and do that. And it's all about him, you know, working towards getting the crown. But then piece by piece all of that unravels until he is ready to give away everything that he has spent the play you know, building up just for a single horse, so that he can live, so that he can keep fighting in the battle maybe. But this has to be about desperation. Maybe also about like a loss of status, a loss of security, but most importantly has to have like a descent into desperation. Incitatus is I think the only real horse on this list. Although also kind of mythological, because Incitatus was the horse of the Emperor Caligula of Rome, and Caligula famously said that he would, or threatened to, make his horse a consul, or was it a senator? But like, anyway, appoint him to government, right? And this story is really fascinating because it's like interpreted differently by different people. Like some people see it as a sign of Caligula just being insane, like just total nuts guy wants to make his favorite horse a politician. Another way is that to show Caligula being really indulgent and incompetent, you know, like, you know, just because he loves the horse so much, he thinks he can make it, you know, as part of the apparatus of the state, shows that he just treats politics as a playground and he doesn't really, you know, care about anything. And then the other way of showing it is that actually it's sort of a satire, right? And that he is, you know, making a sort of, he's taking a dig at the senators, no, by saying like, well, my horse would do just as good a job or even a better job than you, so I'm going to make my horse one of you people. In which case, you know, it doesn't have to be incompetent or crazy at all. He could just be being kind of witty and fun. So I quite like that there's different ways of reading it, and some people also see it as a mix of all three of those interpretations. So I want to read a book which, as much as possible, captures that blend of all those different like kind of readings and feelings that you get from that story. So, you know, we want something with politics, madness, indulgence, incompetence, and satire maybe. Like we want all of that. Let's get all of that if possible. That's going to be a tricky one, but we need to have some tricky ones, right, for the challenge. Next one, Unicorn. I'm going to have like an easy version and a hard version. The easy version is just, it's got to be a fantasy novel because unicorns are, you know, like a symbol of high fantasy. But the harder version would be something which again draws on some of the other interesting like symbols and like kind of resonances that are connected to the image of the unicorn. Unicorns, interestingly enough, originally are seen as like kind of very like masculine, strong, fierce beasts that were difficult to tame and difficult to catch. And so they're always like in like medieval stuff depicted with a young virginal woman, because that was the way to catch them. Like kind of the pure, chaste, innocent woman can tame the wild beast. And, you know, it's got like the big phallic horn and everything. So it was seen as like kind of this symbol of masculinity deferring to femininity. And I think that is maybe also why that the unicorn also just ended up in modern times being more associated with femininity and also with queerness. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. But another thing is that they're the symbol of Scotland. So my ideal book for this would be like a Scottish queer fantasy novel, but you know, that's quite specific. So if I can't get all of that, I'll settle just for a fantasy novel. Next we have Emma, which these are the two characters for picture and horse. That's what it means. These are like little devotional tablets, like pieces of wood that you write a wish on in Japan, in Japanese shrines, and you hang them up in a special place in the shrine, and it's all like kind of public, so everybody can go and you can read all the people's wishes there, and it's quite fun to do actually, in a sort of nosy sort of way. But traditionally I think it probably serves a purpose also of like, you know, like keeping the community connected to each other and knowing kind of what's going on in other people's personal lives, even though the actual wishes are of course anonymous unless you put your name on it. But it's not really for the other people, it's for the gods. And then like I've read different reasons about why it's called a picture horse. The main one is that like it used to originally, the picture on the back of the wood would be a horse, but why that is, I'm not so sure. I think like in the old days they used to actually bring horses to shrines as offerings to the shrine. and then they, you know, they would pray. But also I think there's an association with horses as messengers, and so it's a way, you know, like you're bringing your message to the gods via this like little horse. But yeah, they still do it in Japan. It's fun. I recommend it. If you're in Japan, write a little Emma and see what everybody else has written, because a lot of foreigners, you know, write in English and stuff like that. But yeah, one of the things I like about Emma a lot is that it's that sort of community factor, you know what I mean? It's not like Christianity where you kind of pray either through a priest or like directly from your brain to the god. It's instead, it's like you put it on the wish, and then you put the wishes all in a place that everybody can read them together, and then they all get burned at a certain point of the year. But yeah, like something, I want to read a book which is about wishes and about community in some way. And the last prompt is another Greek myth one. It's Orion, not Orion like Orion the hunter, but Orion. This is my favorite horse from Greek mythology. Orion is descended from the gods, and like when I think Poseidon and Demeter have sex in the form of horses. But the point is that like he just goes from worse owner to worse owner, and yet he always stays a champion. Like he's given to Heracles first, and Heracles does some cool stuff with, like, he wins a race or whatever. Then he passes on Orion as a gift to a king, Adrastus. Adrastus, I hate him. But anyway, like Adrastus he's just like this stupid little politician. But he gives the Orion at one point to his adopted, like his son-in-law, Polynices, who is like the son of Oedipus and is cursed and stuff. And Orion does not like being given to this guy, and he's really unhappy about being forced to race with this person who he sees as like unworthy of himself. But he does the race anyways, despite feeling uncomfortable about it. And then Apollo has promised somebody else that guy's going to win the race. So even though Orion is obviously the best horse in the race, Apollo sends like a monster. Like the ground opens, a monster comes out, spooks Orion, and he throws his rider, Polynices, on the ground. But despite that, Orion is like, fuck it, I'm gonna win anyway. And so he just runs, and he does win the race. But of course, because he's riderless, then the prize goes to the person that Apollo favored. But I just love that attitude, you know, like even though he's lost his rider, he's like, I didn't even care about that guy. I just want to win the race, you know, because I know I'm better than these other horses. Then later on, when there's this massive war, and things are going south, it's a stupid war that never should have happened, that Adrastus, I think, is to blame for basically starting it. But anyway, Orion just nopes out of there. He's like, you know what? Everyone's dying. I'm just going to leave. So he just runs away from the war, but carrying his master, Adrastus, on his back. And Adrastus is the only hero on that side who survives. All the other leaders die because it was a really dumb idea. But Orion just gets out of there, you know. This horse is just like really sensible. He's really proud. He knows his worth compared to the stupid humans around him. But also he's very loyal, right? Like he does protect his master at the end. That one guy who he threw off his back, he never liked him to begin with. So I don't know. I really like Orion. So this just has to be a book about a character who's inspirational. As inspirational to me as Orion is in the Greek myths. That's it. Those are all of my prompts. I'm looking forward to filling this out. I hope I can get all of them this year, or at least make the board look as pretty as my snake one does. But yeah, I am very excited to undertake this challenge. Let me know which of these horse stories you found the most entertaining down in the comments, or even better, let me know a different horse story, whether from fiction or from folk tales or whatever, that you think I could have used to make a good prompt out of. I'd love to hear it. I like hearing stories, and I like animals, so it would be perfect, the perfect combination. Happy Year of the Horse, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.